Octopath Traveler 2 is a fantastic game. The original was already excellent in its own right, and the sequel has, in my opinion, surpassed it in almost every way. The characters, story, gameplay, and overall presentation built upon the foundation set by the first game and took it to a new level, as you would hope for from a follow-up. While I do prefer certain Travelers' plotlines in the original game, I acknowledge that this is an entirely subjective opinion. That said, there is one Traveler in the second game whose story I feel is overall lacking compared to everyone else. One character whose journey was handled not as tactfully as it perhaps could have been. It should go without saying that this video will include massive spoilers for the entirety of Octopath 2, including the post-game and true final boss. So, if you haven't already and possess even the slightest bit of interest in playing possibly one of the best JRPGs of the modern era, I'd highly suggest you go and do so. With that out of the way, assuming you're still here, let's discuss the shortcomings of Ochette's story. Ochette's story begins when she's still a young beastling girl, beastlings being a race in this game. A white lion named Juva informs her that she is going to be a hunter, as well as a protector of her home island. I guess she doesn't really have much choice in the matter. What she does have a choice in, however, is which rare beast will serve as her companion, a lejackal or a malama owl. Players get to choose between these two, Akala and Mahina, and that choice will affect Ochette's gameplay going forward. Whichever beast Ochette does not pick becomes consumed by an ominous purple aura, lashing out before fleeing to parts unknown. Juva, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to pay this much mind. Cut forward to several years later, and Ochette has become a rather skilled hunter, whose main mission is tracking down and eliminating any threat to the island's ecosystem. We quickly learn that the biggest of these threats are, of course, humans, who have their own settlement not far from the Beastling village. These people are greedy, selfish, and blatantly rather prejudiced towards the Beastlings. Their leader, Kohaze, appears slightly more amicable at first, though it quickly becomes apparent that she only cares about beastlings insofar as they can prove useful when a human child goes missing, and she doesn't want to send any of her own people into the dangerous ruins to look for her. Despite all that, Ochette volunteers to go search for the child and bring her back, venturing deep into the ruins of Totohaha. She manages to find, befriend, and rescue the girl, though the animals of the jungle seem increasingly spooked by something. By the time Ochette returns, it's already nightfall, and she finds that her village is under attack by some strange monster unlike anything she's ever seen. Juva does his best to fend off the beast, but it's Ochette and her chosen companion that ultimately quell this threat. Juva then explains that the beast was an omen, a sign that the night of the scarlet moon approaches. He tells Ochette that every 400 years or so, the moon turns crimson, and horrific monsters descend upon the Isle of Totohaha from parts unknown. In the past, the island was protected by 3 legendary beasts, who were collectively strong enough to repel these abominations until daybreak. Alas, after the last calamity, these beasts wandered off to become the guardians of distant lands. For some reason. Ochette's mission becomes clear. Travel Celestia and gather the legendary beasts, so that they may reunite and repel the coming crisis once more. All things considered, it's not a bad premise for a story, and Ochette's first chapter is handled, for the most part, pretty well. Unfortunately, her following chapters are where things sort of start to decline. Players can search for the 3 beasts, Glacius, Terra, and Ataracta, in any order, though their recommended levels make it pretty obvious you're meant to go for them in the reverse of what I just said. So, for the sake of simplicity, let's cover these chapters in the intended order. Ochette's journey first takes her to Conning Creek, where the great beast of the sea, Cataracta, made its home, at least until it was viciously murdered. Ochette encounters a woman named Alpione who was meant to be Cataracta's caretaker. Unfortunately, greedy humans desired the sea beast's scales for profit, so they attacked and killed the guardian, leaving naught but bones on a nearby islet. Alpione continues to safeguard that sacred place, though, even though her charge is seemingly long dead. Once proving her intentions pure, Ochette convinces Alpione to let her into the depths of the island, where she discovers an egg. Cataracta's egg, to be precise. The egg soon hatches, and the newly born sea serpent takes a liking to Ochette. While it's far from the mighty guardian she came for, Ochette decides that this little guy, who she calls Acta, will have to do for now. Before she leaves, though, Alpione informs Ochette that the one leading the assault on Cataracta was an ominous figure simply known as the Dark Hunter, setting up things to come. Next on Ochette's travel list is the town of Crackridge, where the beast of the land, Terra, has settled down. She quickly discovers that the town suffers from occasional quakes due to the sleeping titan beneath it, and no one seems particularly willing to help Ochette figure out how to reach him. They're all rather cowardly and somewhat wary of this peculiar outsider. Well, save for one, a somewhat lazy, gluttonous individual called Palm, who agrees to guide Ochette down into the chasm in exchange for food. Once they reach the bottom, Ochette decides to wake up the sleeping Terra by firing an arrow at him. This goes about as well as you'd expect, but she's thankfully able to calm the Titan down from his rage and convince him to come back to Totohaha with her. Terra then reveals that he was also attacked by the Dark Hunter, but managed to repel her, after sustaining some serious wounds that forced him into hibernation. 2 beasts down, 1 to go. The last stop is Stormhail, where Glacius is said to reside atop a mountain. The way is guarded by a Sanctum Knight, who informs Ochette that, some years ago, a group of hunters tried to kill Glacius, and that has since sent the land's guardian into a frenzy. She's been causing non-stop blizzards on the mountaintop ever since, and it's the Sanctum Knight's job to stop anyone else from reaching the sacred protector again. Ochette, rather than attempting to explain her intentions or understand why the guy is a little hesitant to let a random stranger pass, beats him up and continues on her way. Ochette encounters a man named Haig on the mountain trail, who's searching for the bodies of his fallen comrades. She soon learns that Haig was part of that group that tried to hunt and kill Glacius all those years ago, for something as petty as the glory of it, no less, and that he was one of the few who survived that encounter. He's come to try and give his fallen allies a proper burial, as well as avenge them by finishing what they started all those years ago, because I guess this idiot learned nothing from the first attempt. Ochette finds Haig again in Glacius's nest, where the true cause of the Guardian's rage is apparent. A clutch of eggs that had been smashed to bits. Turned out that Haig's party failed miserably to kill Glacius, so they murdered her children out of spite. Lovely. In spite of all that, Ochette comes to Haig's rescue, fighting Glacius until her rage subsides. She then basically asks Glacius to forget about her dead children and return to Totohaha to protect the island from the Scarlet Moon, because that seems appropriate. Well, we already recruited a literal infant to help fight the apocalypse, so why not a grieving mother? Haig and Ochette make their way down the mountain, where Haig finally concedes what an absolute asshole he's been. Turns out, though, that his party was actually being led by, you guessed it, the Dark Hunter. She convinced a bunch of glory-seeking idiots to try taking on the legendary beast, and when they failed to kill Glacius, it was the Dark Hunter who smashed the eggs. Haig just stood back and let it happen, so frustrated by his defeat that he was willing to just do nothing and watch Glacius's children die. Even so, Ochette offers him some jerky and the two become friends. Finally, with all three legendary beasts in tow, Ochette returns to Totohaha, just in time to help Juva and the beastlings prepare for the night of the Scarlet Moon. Juva explains that, while he doesn't know all the details, the calamity is apparently caused by a gateway somewhere on the island that leads to another world. We will get back to this later. Kohaze shows up once again to be a selfish prick, dismissing the warnings about the coming calamity to demand more land, and gets appropriately brushed off. The Scarlet Moon rises, monsters arrive, and a big epic battle begins. The humans come running and pleading to the beastlings for help, arguing ensues, and only after Ochette saves the humans does Kohaze decide to start fighting as well, under the pretense of not wanting to owe the animals any favors. With the humans and beastlings now reluctantly working together, Ochette fights her way through the swarm of monsters, relying on the aid of Terra and Glacius. Finally, she encounters one beast far more ferocious than the others, the Darkling, who looks awfully familiar.
And you were the one I didn't choose. It is you, isn't it? From that day long ago?
Depending on whether you chose Mahina or Kala at the start, this monster will be a corrupted form of the Lajackal or Malama Owl, consumed by fury and hatred. The Darkling proves far too much for Ochette at first and knocks her into the ocean, leaving her to drown. There, amidst the waves, something awakens inside Ochette. Her pure, kind heart manifests a power that allows her to rise back up from the sea and face the Darkling head-on. With this newfound strength, Ochette can allow Acta, as well as her starting companion, to temporarily take on a new, more mature form. After a long and harsh battle, Ochette finally fells the Darkling, and offers it a piece of jerky as one final act of compassion before it passes on. The night ends and the sun rises. The calamity has been averted, and humans and beastlings finally settle their differences at last. Juba explains that Ochette's newfound strength can only be the power of the sacred flame, which Temenos' story explains as the power that the god Ilfric used to banish a wicked deity long ago. With that, Ochette has finally proven herself a worthy guardian, and she readily accepts full responsibility for watching over Totohaha from that day forward. But wait, it feels like we're forgetting something. What about the Dark Hunter? Whatever happened to her? Well, to get the answer to that question, we have to look at the post-game story, Journey for the Dawn, which is unlocked after completing all a traveler's individual tales. Now, recapping everything from Journey for the Dawn would take far too long, but here's a very quick synopsis. So there's this cult called the Moonshade Order that worships Vide, an evil god that wants to consume everything and destroy the world. This is the same entity that Ilfric beat a long time ago with the Sacred Flame. The Moonshade Order is primarily made up of a bunch of nihilists who have utterly lost faith in humanity and lack any hope that the future is worth fighting for. So they want to resurrect Vide and bring an end to Celestia. They do this by finding 4 altars scattered across the world, each one lit with a piece of the sacred flame that keeps Vide sealed beneath the ocean, and they extinguish the flames. It appears that, in order to extinguish the sacred flames, one must stand before the altar and perform a ritualistic sacrifice. The exact details of how this is meant to occur are not entirely clear, but it appears that all you need to do is spill blood before the altar while harboring a deep sense of hopelessness and or hatred for the world. Also, possibly while wielding one of these cursed weapons called the Dark Blood weapons. One of these sacrifices is Petrichor, otherwise known as the Dark Hunter, who serves the Moonshade Order. As it turns out, Petrichor captured whichever animal companion Ochette did not choose and tortured them for years, instilling the animal with a hatred so profound that it warped them into the Darkling. Once the night of the Scarlet Moon arrived, Petrichor offered herself up to be viciously torn apart by the Darkling before Totohaha's flame altar, causing it to be extinguished. I'm not sure if this implies that all the sacrifices need to happen on the night of the Scarlet Moon, though that frankly ties into a larger issue with Octopath's story, in that it's sort of impossible to put together a truly coherent timeline. Players can do whichever stories they want in any order, and so chapters have to be written as though the travelers are undertaking their respective journeys alone. Yeah, it's a whole thing that we're not going to get any further into right now. Also, the gate to another world is never properly explained. I assume this might be referring to the Gate of Finis, which leads to the underworld and the game's secret boss Caldera, but that gate is located on a totally different island all the way out in the Eastern Sea. Frankly, that whole topic could be a video unto itself, but we're not here to theorize. So just know that the Night of the Scarlet Moon is something that the game never truly explains either. Though, with my luck, they might address it in the Japanese exclusive mobile game anyways. Thanks, Square Enix. Anyways, bringing the topic back to the Dark Hunter. Petrichor is such a wasted character. She's built up all throughout Ochette's entire journey as this mysterious figure who's hunting Totohaha's guardians. But she never even meets Ochette and effectively dies off screen. Hell, we only even learn her name and a little bit of her backstory thanks to Ori's journal entries. It honestly feels like her only purpose is to be part of the anagram that spells out Octopath, establishing her as one of the anti-travelers, as it were. Seriously, Petrichor would have worked so much better as a part of Ochette's final boss. Similar to how Hikari has to challenge his dark self to a duel during his finale, I think it would have been rad to have Ochette provoke Petrichor for a one-on-one battle, in which they both call upon monsters back and forth on each other. Ochette has her beastly companions, while Petrichor has the abominations of the Scarlet Moon, including a corrupted version of the Starting Companion. Hell, if these monsters really are from the underworld, maybe Petrichor can even summon the original Cataracta's soul for an attack? Just a thought. After the one-on-one fight, we can say that the Darkling becomes so fueled by hate that it turns on its master, devouring Petrichor and powering up to the colossal beast that then becomes the true final boss of Ochette's story. Maybe Petrichor still spurs it on to do so, showing her zealous commitment to the cause once more. Of course, this might not work super well if it's not done before the altar, but maybe we can say that Petrichor sacrifices someone else to snuff out the flame before setting out to challenge the island's guardian. Kohaze, perhaps, or even just a random beastling? I don't know. This might not be the most elegant solution, but at least it would have given the Dark Hunter more of a presence in the story beyond effectively just being a background character. She's the only member of the Moonshade Order that none of the travelers even meet, and that is a genuine shame. She feels kind of tacked on, which frankly raises a bigger issue with Ochette's story as a whole. Ochette's entire journey feels, to me, like it's trying to tackle way too much at once. She's going on a quest to find these legendary beasts to stop an apocalyptic event. But there's a whole subplot about this Dark Hunter trying to kill the beasts that, for reasons that are frankly never even fully explained. And there's also an underlying theme about how humans are just the worst because they disrespect nature and do awful things for terrible reasons. Now, I can acknowledge that the last part does tie into the broader narrative a bit, as it's the reason why members of the Moonshade Order committed to their whole Resurrected V-Day plot. But I don't think it works well in isolation. Being real here, the only decent humans that Ochette meets over the course of her journey, excluding the other travelers since they aren't acknowledged in her cutscenes, are a middle-aged woman who's also rather jaded with humanity, a lazy glutton, and a guard who we have to beat up because Ochette can't be bothered to take a couple minutes to at least try and explain her intentions to the poor guy. Haig has a change of heart by the end, though I'd hardly call it a redemption arc after everything he's done. And Kohaze just deciding to stop being racist and divide the land evenly feels a little sudden, if I'm being honest. Frankly, I'm not entirely convinced that she doesn't still just see the beastlings as something to be used. Her settlement clearly depends on them so much for protection, after all. Other traveler stories also show some of the worst aspects of humanity as well, of course. You've got antagonists like a bloodthirsty warlord, a greedy businessman, a vain songstress, and a petty, jealous professor. The reason why I think these stories work much better, though, is because we actually get to see some proper contrast against these villains with the travelers and the people they meet along the way. Hikari stands in opposition to Mugen because he abhors needless violence, wanting to build a nation founded on prosperity rather than conquest. Particio contrasts Rock because he wants to share his wealth with those who need it, rather than hoard it all for himself. Agnia works against Dulcinea because she doesn't put herself above others, reaching out a helping hand even when it doesn't concern or benefit her. Even Oswald realizes there's more to life than the blind pursuit of knowledge at any cost, unlike Harvey, who will use any method to uncover the secrets of magic, no matter how depraved. Ochette doesn't really get anything like that. She doesn't have a rival to stand in opposition to, no nihilistic philosophy to contrast. Her story shows her time and again how awful people can be at their worst, and Ochette just kinda forgives them for it, even if these people really don't do anything to earn it. She doesn't even necessarily work as a stand-in for the good of humanity because, well, she's not human. Ochette is a beastling, and beastlings, as we find out, straight up lack a lot of the more selfish and cruel traits of humans. Oh boy, yet another race of fictional animal people that are just inherently better than humanity. Great. I don't enjoy ragging on Ochette. She was actually my starting traveler, and I genuinely do like her character. She's fun, optimistic, and compassionate, if a little naive. Ochette is a great addition to the roster of travelers and has some fantastic chemistry with the other members of the group. Her story, though, it feels lacking. It starts fairly strong and has some genuinely great moments, but ultimately fails to stick the landing, in my opinion. Of the two Octopath Hunters, I definitely say Honnet has a stronger narrative. But what do you all think? Am I being too harsh, or could Ochette's journey have been handled more tactfully? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll see you all next time.